welcome to RealAg Live, everybody. Really appreciate you tuning in today, and we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to hemp it up today. If you want to participate in today's show, all you have to do is enter your question or comment in the box, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch. So any of those four platforms, you can participate. And like we've been doing over the last week, if I do read out your question, guess what? We are going to We're going to mail you a Real Agriculture hat. Emailing you a hat, that would be kind of cheap on my part. Hey, let's bring in today's guest. It is Ted Haney. He is the executive director of the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance, based out of Calgary, Alberta. Hey, Ted, how are you?
Very good. Thank you. Yourself, Shaun?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. So, hey, Ted, you're fresh off your big annual meeting there a couple weeks ago. I was fortunate enough to be able to be the 2-day MC of the event. You had attendance from all over the world.
We did. We had a half a dozen countries present, over 100 participants, and for our first ever online conference, we were very, very pleased.
Yeah, no kidding. So, hemp is an interesting crop. There is extreme passion from people that have been in it for quite some time, but there's a lot of new entrants into this crop as well. Why do you think there's so much interest from new farmers looking to enter get involved in this crop?
I think it's rotation. Farmers are looking at a way to broaden their crop mix, look at different sources of revenue. They might have had some experience with neighbors. A lot of cases, they're actually entering because they have relationship with either a seed buyer for food processing or a decorticator, a fiber processor, or they have a relationship with a licensed cannabis processor so they can sell their flowers for cannabinoid or CBD extraction. And I think more and more we're starting to see those entrants rather than somebody who just had a good idea and want to give it a try. But rotation is a big part of this too, looking just to broaden the crop mix.
Yeah, we're always looking for new crops to add into the cycle, and crops that have potential for profit too. That's there's lots of crop options out there, but it's can you make money growing them that's important. So when we look at the end uses for hemp, does it come down to food, fiber, and flour, the 3 Fs?
That's right. I mean, we look at it as food, feed, fiber, and fractions, and the feed side is today relatively narrow. The only functioning feed market is export of small seed to Europe for the birdseed market. But we're working on a very, very aggressive project to register all of our major food products and seed products for livestock as livestock feed ingredients here in Canada. That's going to open up a great revenue stream. But yes, it's food, selling hemp seeds to food processors. They in turn make hemp seed oil, dehulled hemp seed proteins, isolates, concentrates. That's by far our largest revenue stream in Canada.
Yeah, I actually laughed yesterday. I was in the shower and my wife bought some soap, and it's sitting there. And as I'm pumping the soap, I look and it's like hemp soap. I'm like, wow, this is that's called product incorporation right there.
It is. I mean, my hair is nice and shiny today in part because I've used some hemp oil shampoo yesterday. So I'm right there with you, Shaun.
Okay. Hey, we got a question here from Viren. He says, has there been any developments in the fiber processing side of hemp? For example, new processors in Canada?
Absolutely. We've seen the entry of 3 new players in the commercial decortication area. And we've also seen scale ups within those and other companies. So we've got, now probably 8, operating companies, and within that, a couple of them are in their scale up. So when I say food, feed, fiber, and fractions, the fiber side today is still really has a capacity for 10 or 15% of the total straw produced in Canada. So it's not a functioning national market, but it is producing revenue for farmers who have an association with those fiber processors or those decorticators. And yeah, it is expanding.
Yeah, and Viren also very smartly points out it is Hemp Hour with Haney and Haney. Okay, so okay, so if for some growers in the country that are growing hemp, are they trying to access multiple streams of those end uses, and how possible is that? Like, can you break that down for us a little bit?
Sure. Dual purpose seems to be something that's doable. The hope for tri-purpose is really a bit of a stretch. So there are producers out there that are growing for seed and also harvesting stalks for decortication. That product, because it's a little more mature as a plant when it's harvested, typically doesn't stream into fiber processing for textiles, but it works really well for some of the other products like insulation, hempcrete, etc. So that seems to be a dual purpose that works. There's a dual purpose of people that are growing primarily for fiber, but also harvesting the flowers at an earlier point in the maturity of the plant. So that's a dual purpose that seems to be working also. With respect to all three, I think there's some folks that are trying it, but there's a fair bit of harvest loss of the cannabinoids or trichomes when you combine a mature plant. But I think that's really just a process and technology challenge. I do think we'll see three revenue streams in for a lot of farmers down the road, but two seems to be more reasonable. There's the specialists that grow seed for food. They do not keep anything else for sale. And there are those that are growing exclusively for fiber and selling the stock and not keeping anything else. So they're the specialists as well.
Okay, question here from Lindsay watching on Facebook. When I think hemp, I think of 12-foot tall plants and a nightmare to harvest. Is that still the case?
It really depends on the cultivar you're using. Grain cultivars tend to be a fair bit shorter than dual purpose cultivars. And dual purpose cultivars, fiber and grain, are shorter in again than fiber exclusive or fiber optimized cultivars. Also south and north, the plants will be significantly shorter, a meter or more shorter in the south rather than up along Highway 16, Highway 5 in our sort of northern growing region. So it can be anywhere from 3 to 4 feet up to that 9 to 12 feet. But the nice thing is when using certified seed, which is required in the Canadian hemp industry by regulation, you know what you're going to get before you seed. And so you're prepared. You modify equipment, you bring in specialized equipment, and you work through it. But learn from your neighbor, work with your seed supplier, work with their agronomists so you know what you're going to get and you're prepared for it. We're not seeing very many combine fires anymore. People seem to have worked it out.
Well, that's good. And speaking of certified seed, I thought I saw a release. We have our first feminized variety approved in Canada. Is that true?
We do. It wasn't available for sale in 2020. They did get it registered, but it was really still at the propagation stage. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it commercially available in 2021. There's still some regulatory issues to work out with respect to tracking the THC levels of a feminized plant that's hybridized, that doesn't have the multiple pre-generations. But these are just regulatory issues that'll be worked through.
Yeah, if you look at the U.S. example, where it's a little bit more buyers beware sort of market. There's a lot of hemp growers that were very burned by, hey, I got feminized seeds, and well, they didn't, or the feminization level was not high enough to warrant the cost, and they were really burned. So it's definitely something that Canada wants to prevent from happening here.
Exactly. I mean, the certification process itself, and then the admission of a cultivar on the list of approved cultivars by Health Canada. At one level, it stifles innovation. You can't just come with a strain and start selling it. But on the other hand, it really reduces the risks in our industry. Farmers know what they're going to get when they buy it. They know how it's going to perform, and it's going to be consistent in the field. That outweighs the difficulties of process. And this is one case where I think a little less innovation actually moves the industry a lot further ahead.
Okay, Lindsay's calling me out. We're talking too much shop here. She says, "What the heck does that even mean, feminized?" Do you want to explain that, Ted?
Sure. Feminized seed is produced generally through a hybridized process through two parent lines, and the F1 is a final seed, and it's because of the way that it's spread back, those seeds will produce predominantly or hopefully only female plants. So they're all from a dioecious or a male and female, parent type, and they basically will only grow females. Um, when you're dealing with hemp, you don't take very many males to start producing a lot of pollen. So any stand of feminized hemp needs to be watched closely. Likely needs to have some roguing done to really take out those males. Because if they start to pollinate, it's a massive pollination that occurs, and you'll end up growing a lot of seed.
Yeah, and it happens fast and over a wide geography. You have, limited, just a short handful of days to make sure those male plants are completely rogued out to prevent. Because what happens is if they go to seed, it lowers the CBD level. Feminized seeds mainly used for CBD flower production. So I was just going to ask you about the genetics.
I was talking to a plant psychologist here the other day, and the question was, what's the motivation for the plant? And if it's not pollinated, it continues to produce these resins to attract the pollinators. So it keeps on producing the resins, building the amount of cannabinoids, CBD, THC, CBD, or CBG, etc., until it hopefully gets pollinated, because that's what it wants to do. So that's one of a kind of an interesting take on it, but it appears to be a pretty reasonable approach.
Yeah, one of the presentations I really enjoyed at your annual meeting was from the gentleman from Europe, and I forget his name, but he talked a lot about using some of the fibers in like F1 cars and to reduce the weight. And I think he was a little bit surprised by some of my F1 knowledge as I was asking him some questions. But it just shows the diversity of this crop and what we can use it for. There's a lot of applications. What is preventing us from all these things sound good, but how do we really get them in motion where we can really capitalize on them and really incentivize people to put in more acres?
Scale is important, and consistency is important to be able to meet the needs of large scale players who need an automotive panel. The upside of providing an automotive panel to F1 is that you're outfitting one car at a time. That same company, as Christian was talking about, they provide the strengthening cores to high performance skis. They provide it to again, high performance cars, not only F1 but bespoke high end cars being built in Europe. They also are putting that same strengthening technology in boats and in other in performance boats, race boats, where they want the strength without the weight and without the thickness. And so they've really carved out a great business in the bespoke world. There is a move in Canada again to start engaging the automotive sector in Canada, and the reality is they want to know standards and specifications, which speaks to consistency, and they need to know that the supplier can provide in volume. And that is the same thing when you're looking at providing hemp cellulose to the paper manufacturers. They start at 100,000 tons of feedstock that they need to put in a blended product. Well, that's a lot of stock from a lot of acreage. So it's coming. We have to have the decortication capacity. We have to have the acreage behind that, and then streaming the decortication to these specific end uses. It is coming, but it's one step at a time.
Yeah, Derek Hurst is watching on Facebook, and he points out it is Christian from B-Comp that was making those comments. So I appreciate you clarifying that for me, Derek. Viren has a good question here. What is the relative growth outlook of the CBD hemp side for 2021? The market has seen a tremendous crash in the U.S., but there still appears to be some investment in Canada.
There is. I mean, again, plus minus on regulations, right? We tend to be more accepting of regulations in Canada, and we have more regulations. I'm not sure if it's because or what pushes what, but In Canada, the hemp flowers can only be sold from licensed hemp cultivators to licensed cannabis processors, and then they can only sell their products to three markets: the Canadian medical marijuana market, which is direct to patients who have got prescriptions; the provincial and territorial regulated retail market, that's all the pot shops that are licensed by the provinces; and international medical marijuana programs, the biggest one of which is selling to Germany. So those markets actually have some strength to them. The medical demand is there; it's growing, and the sale through the regulated markets, retail markets, are there, but not growing that fast. So our push is to open up regulatory pathways to allow low THC hemp derived extracts for sale in retail, so that consumers can buy this product, which isn't recreational. It's health and wellness. They can buy it at the places they prefer to buy it, which is at supermarkets, pharmacies, and health food stores. And when that happens, we'll see again a significant, I mean a very significant increase in effective demand.
Yeah, I printed off an email that your organization CHTA had sent out about how it's time to remove hemp from the list of controlled substances globally. Canada is not the only country that's dealing with this, and we heard that from a number of the international stakeholders that were at that CHTA meeting. Everybody seems to be in agreement on that and trying to make it happen, because it's going to allow for a little bit more flexibility in how we use the CBD product in food and drinks and all that kind of stuff.
That's right. I mean, a lot of people will take a look at the United Nations and say, well, that's just a useless bunch of bureaucrats going in circles. But I think that many of us don't understand how much the United Nations affects many regulations at the national level. I mean, is it by surprise that certain regulations start to show up in multiple countries all within a very short period of time? Well, it is a surprise until you realize that many of those regulations have reached a consensus point in a United Nations commission or division. In this particular case, we're talking about the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs that's administered by the Commission on Narcotic Drugs, which is a World Health Organization entity based in Vienna. In December, they're going to be looking at the reclassification of cannabis. Right now, we're regulated by them or classified by them, just like heroin and just like fentanyl. Doesn't make sense. They know it doesn't make sense. We support the World Health Organization's expert committee on drug dependence. They've said if there's less than 0.2% THC in any cannabis extract, it should be removed completely from any intergovernmental control, which means open trade, which then becomes permissive at a national level to allow the kinds of things that we want in Canada, to allow low THC, low risk products to be sold at open retail.
So, what are governments scared of, Ted? Is it lack of testing, like long-term testing on possible health effects of taking CBD? I take CBD I got two really bad knees. I don't, it's helped me. Others have a lot of same kind of stories. So, like, what are governments scared of?
A couple of thoughts on that. One is new. Nobody wants to be the first one through the gate. Everybody looks at the 1961 Single Convention, and they will always fall back to that when they don't want to make a heroic move, acknowledging that Canada, when it legalized marijuana in Canada for retail sale, broke almost every part of the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs, which says that this product should only be used for medical purposes or used for research, nothing else. So there was a heroic move, but then to expand it out, we have to be careful that we're going to be consistent with the Single Convention. So that's part of it, and it's real, but it tends to be defense. Other than that, it's who wants to be first and to take flack or to try something. So there's not, generally speaking, in the regulatory world, a lot of confidence to move first. They're always looking for who's made the move first. And finally, CBD is acknowledged as a low risk product that is tolerated at high levels by humans. the World Health Organization, the expert committee has already looked at that and have communicated on it, but there's a hesitancy to bring out a new product. But if we're looking at a low THC extract with CBD and some of the other cannabinoids and terpenes in it, what's the risk of that as compared to Tylenol or valerian or St. John's wort? Bottom line is it's not a high risk product. So it just, we need to push and work against the regulatory momentum that says where we are today is where we are, and we'll talk about tomorrow later.
Yeah, I saw a presentation, going back about a year ago in Colorado, where there was somebody from it was the U.S. body that works with the nutraceutical industry, and that person was giving a presentation on, hey, we were at this spot that you're at right now. It was a number of years ago. We feel your pain. We know what you're going through. You need to get through some of these bureaucratic regulatory hurdles for your industry to really, really grow, and providing some of those kind of comparisons. Hey, question here from Devin. He says, so many people I know work in an industry or a job that has drug testing, and companies will fire people for residual THC. So people fear job loss for legal product use. Any foresight into this?
It depends where you're from. In Canada, marijuana is legal, like alcohol is legal. So most companies have stopped testing for THC in the drug testing, but they continue to monitor for impairment. So if there's an accident and an individual is found to be impaired, or if somebody shows up to work and is impaired, that's where the focus is. It's not on the blood test. There's some specific exceptions to that where THC is by an employment group specifically barred. But it again, that is not so much an issue in Canada. It's about, are you impaired or are you not impaired? And I'm not aware of anybody that's testing for residual levels of non-THC cannabinoids. It's recognized as being, non-intoxicating. So nothing here. Move on.
Yeah, you get fired for CBD use. That seems a little bit extreme, or somebody doesn't know what's actually going on, and they're just sort of reactionary. Okay, so I guess if you look ahead here, there's a lot of I heard from the meeting. There's a lot of optimism about what this crop can do for farmers, and trying to build jobs and things like that. As you look over the next 3 years, what's mission critical, Ted? What has to happen for this industry to really thrive?
I think we need to. There's three things that come to mind. One is on food. We have grown our industry based on seeds in a bag. So a consumer goes in and buys a bag of dehulled hemp seeds, or a jar of protein, or a bottle of hemp seed oil, and brings it home and then consumes it. That has a certain upside to it that's limited. So on the food side, it's positioning hemp as a food ingredient to large-scale processors. And that means grass status, which we already have, combined with producing isolates and other products that are well-defined or are well-suited for incorporation as a food ingredient, and standards and consistency, which actually don't exist in our industry except for individual companies. CHTA is working on a large set of food standards that will help to allow that movement into food ingredient. The second thing on fiber is decortication capacity, combined with marketing plans that allow the primary decorticated products, BAST and herd and screenings, to move into markets, and value-added marketing plans to take that BAST and herd and screenings fibers and turn them into products such as insulation and hempcrete and bedding and. So that's required. And on the fraction side, we need to have a modernization of regulation to allow low THC hemp extracts to be sold in open retail, because that's where people want to buy it.
Derek has a question for you. I understand the CHTA is at the table helping create standards in industrial hemp fiber via the ASTM. Can you give any insight with those on those standards? Does Europe already have fiber standards?
Europe has a great sense of a great set of commercial or corporate standards between buyers and sellers, but they as well are very connected to our work in doing industry-based standards, and they don't exist in Europe in any real way at this time. So we're starting in the field, assessment of quality of fiber for plants standing in the field. That's everything from the cultivar to height to width to maturity. Then we're looking at quality of bales, and that includes not only what went in, but dockage, humidity, moisture content, and dockage. So what other non-hemp straw components are in that bale. Looking at standards for assessing the level of retting that is been subjected to these stocks before baling, which will help send that bale into more of a industrial setting or into a textile setting. And then the next step, so those are all underway right now, developing those standards with players that are in that game, from producers to decorticators and so on. The next step is then going to be setting standards for the tertiary or value-added products. We need to have hempcrete, pour in place hempcrete and hempcrete blocks fully standardized so that we can bring them up to ASTM. C can get an ASTM standard for them so that they can come back to Canada through the Standards Council of Canada and National Research Council and go directly into the National Building Code so that they can be used along with hemp bat insulation, can be used in building construction without sign off of engineers, where the engineer has to onload the risk of non-performance or the liability. So that's why we're in this game, and those are a couple of examples of the positive outcomes that'll be produced.
And Derek says, "Hey, that's just what I wanted to hear." So good answer, Ted. Yeah, here's what I sort of picked up from the meeting a couple weeks ago is that there's so much focus on the CBD opportunities, and a lot of the hype that was there 2 to 3 years ago, but something, the fiber really seems to be would really establish a base of demand for the product. When you're talking about hempcrete and insulation, and we talked about cars already, that's consistent demand.
Yeah, all of it is consistent demand. So we're building that second revenue stream in fiber, like we built the original revenue stream in food. And as it's built, it's recurring, it's ongoing, it's predicated or based on the relationship between the grower and the primary processor and the decorticator and the secondary processors and their clients, all in corporate chains. So there's no flash in the pan with this at all. These are very conscious and real world programs and business plans that will work day in, week in, month in, year in, and help build our industry.
And how is Canada perceived globally in all of these discussions? We talk about all these end uses. Are we looked upon as sort of like can Canada lead us, or is Canada playing catch up?
We are looked at as a leader in hemp as a commercial crop, like hemp will one day become in the United States. We're looked at as being, this is how farmers grow it. This is how processors process it. And this is how you build a base of expertise and knowledge and how it enters the farming community. That us in Europe are really looked as leaders in that way. In food technology and food processing and marketing, Canada is absolutely looked at as a leader. Because of our acceptance of regulation as a culture, we're also developing a leadership role in creation of standards for all of our primary products and coming secondary products. Europe is looking to us, the United States is looking to us, as is Australia, New Zealand, Latin America, China. They're really supportive of the work that we're doing because we can talk standards as a form of regulation and not get excited and not build up animosity and not end up with factions that are yelling at each other. We actually build them through consensus, understanding if we build it, then we should be prepared to live with it, and it will be a strong support underneath our industry going ahead. So yes, we are looked at and we're counted on as leading that process at the same time.
I gave the example earlier of the nutraceutical industry. You and I have talked previously about some of the comparisons that you draw to your work in the beef industry trying to build markets. At the convention, there was a discussion from Gord Bacon of Pulse Canada, kind of giving a bit of a pep talk, a motivational talk, if you will, on, hey, you know what? We've gone through some of the same stuff as well. Why did you invite Gordon to the meeting?
Well, no surprise that Gordon was there to catch him at the end of an illustrious career in helping to guide the pulse industry from what the hell are you growing to being an absolute mainline crop and sector in the industry. It is our path. The hemp industry is at the beginning of it. They are full-fledged major players. So really, we wanted his story. What is it that brought you from the fringe to mainline during the period that you were there? And really his answer was surprisingly simple. One is you have to stay with it. Secondly, you have to have health benefits for food that you have to research and confirm and promote. And you have to have sustainability claims that you've researched, confirmed, and promote if you want to move into the food processing and international markets full-fledged. And that is exactly where we're going. It really did validate not only our standards setting system we have in place, but as well, we're just doing the work on food claims for health and wellness. And we are also doing the first round of work on hemp sustainability. We know that hemp can be sustainable. We know it should be sustainable, but it doesn't have a great carbon account when you burn 90% of your straw every year, which is the majority of the carbon that's actually put into the plant during the growing cycle. But we will have, as we increase utilization of straw, creating fiber and putting it into long-term durable uses. So that's what he said. Just focus on those two big deals and stay with it and know what your strengths are. And that was great advice.
Well, instead of just being also just the raw commodity, think about being an ingredient. That was another thing that I took away from his presentation.
Yeah, it's no more, it's not, it's not seeds in a bag. It's as a food processing ingredient. And I've mentioned that before. It's where we're beginning to position ourselves, and we're building the pieces so that a General Mills will take it on. Now, if a General Mills takes it on in a major way, again, that will be a sustainable, ongoing, regular demand, but they have high requirements of capacity, standards, health, and sustainability. If you don't have those, they're not interested.
Yeah,
We're building it right now.
Yeah, and Derek sums it up well. Pulse Canada playbook. Imitation is the greatest form of flattery. Let's get a copy for sure. Hey, Ted, this has been
a week after I joined CHTA. I called up Gordon and said, Gord, I hope you're in a generous mood. I want to see your strategy. I want to see your business plan. I want to see the whole bit. And without saying too much, Gord is a generous person. So yeah, that it's not surprising we're following that line.
Pretty good template. Hey, Ted, yeah. I really appreciate you joining us here today on RealAg Live, shedding some light on what's going on in the Canadian hemp industry, and we'll do it again soon.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Shaun.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in today to RealAg Live. Ooh, we hemped it up there. Lots of great stuff. It is a very, very cool crop. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of potential end uses, a lot of opportunity for growth for it to be on more acres as the years go on across Canada. Tomorrow on RealAg Live, Kara Oosterhouse will be in the host seat, and she's going to have Ethan Wallace, Ontario dairy farmer, will be here talking about modern-day dairy farming and what is he doing with jerseys over Holsteins. So they'll have a fun discussion about his dairy farm. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Live, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Cheers.